Facilitation isn't just about what happens in the room. It's about how you design the workshop before you even get there. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to design a workshop, and I'm going to give you a simple 3-part process that you can use regardless of the group, regardless of the context, regardless of the topic. It's a 3-part process that's simple and repeatable no matter where you are. Hi, I'm Kerri Price. I'm the founder of the Facilitators Network, and I use the principles of deliberate generosity to make sure that no meeting or workshop is ever wasted. I've been doing this work for 20 odd years, and I've facilitated thousands of meetings, workshops, and community conversations, and now I help other trainers and facilitators do it well too. Let's get into it. The term workshop is used interchangeably. Traditionally, a workshop was a process. So a facilitator would facilitate a planning day, strategic planning, ideation, problem solving. But these days, a workshop is also used to describe a training or a learning session. In this video, I'm going to share with you a 3-part process that was originally designed for workshops that were about planning or process. But equally, you can use it to design or shape up a workshop that is for training or learning. As we go through the process, I'll give you some small distinctions so it makes sense whether you're planning for process or planning for training. The 3-part process needs to be done in order. The part 3 is the design part, but part 1 and part 2 is what makes part 3 possible. Okay, part 1. Before you can even think about designing a workshop, you need to get really clear on the purpose of the session. And when I say really clear, I mean much more detailed than just it's a team meeting or it's a training about communication. We want to really dig into the layers of purpose so that we know what success looks like at the end. And when I'm thinking about purpose for me, I think through the purpose of a session through 4 key lenses. The first is, why this? And so when we think about why this, the questions I ask are, why are we even having this meeting? What would success look like? What changes are we wanting to see at the end of this session? How will we know if this workshop or meeting has achieved what we need it to achieve? And I also ask myself, why do we think that this workshop is the way to attack this problem? Is it really a workshop situation, or is there another way that we could address this issue? So that's the first why. Why this? The second why is why now? And when I talk about why now, I mean, why has this workshop or meeting been called right at this point in time? Has something happened to trigger the need for this workshop? Or is this just something that happens every year or every quarter? And if it is something that happens every year or every quarter, who decided that that is the right rhythm or cadence for this kind of session? If it's more of a one-off, if it's part of a project, it's something's triggered this meeting or workshop, where does it fit in the timeline? What meetings or workshops are happening before this session takes place? And what meetings or workshops are happening after the session takes place? How does it fit into the bigger picture or the bigger timeline for this project? So that's the second why. Why now? The third why that I ask myself is, why them? Why are the people in the room in the room? Have they been invited and they get to say yes or no as to whether they attend? Is it an open invitation and anyone can just rock up? Is this a workshop where people have been told they need to be in the room, and maybe they're not coming with the best attitude to kick us off? Maybe they don't want to be there at all. When I ask why them, I'm also thinking about the group dynamics, the power dynamics that are in the room, the different levels of management or staff, the other power or privilege dynamics that might exist within the group. The more I know about who's going to be in the room, the more I can think carefully about the activities, the processes, the structures I might use to even out that power imbalance. And the fourth why that I ask myself is, why me? Why am I the right person to facilitate this workshop? Now, as an independent facilitator, this is something I ask of potential clients all the time. They give me a phone call, they flick me an email, and they're requesting my services. When I ask why me, I get a real sense of how they're expecting me to show up in the room. And so knowing what makes you unique as a facilitator and sharing that with your potential client, explaining why me, why I'm the right person for the job, it gives you permission to show up in the room and include the processes and structures and types of activities that are unique to you. So asking why me of yourself and of potential clients is a really important part of the design process. Okay, so part 2. Once you've got clear on your purpose, your why this, why now, why them, and why me, part 2 is about getting clear on your mini objectives. What are all the little milestones, the little targets you need to reach along the way in order to achieve the overall purpose of the session? And when I'm working with new facilitators to help them design their first workshops or community conversations, we walk through the wheel of what's. Because it doesn't matter what meeting or workshop or training session you're designing, there's really 5 key questions, what questions, that you need to ask yourself. And if you can answer those questions, you will have identified the mini objectives or the mini goals you need to reach along the way in order for the workshop to be successful. And this is how the wheel works. The first question you need to ask yourself is, what do participants need to feel? So in order for the workshop to be successful, how do participants need to feel in the room? Now, there's some obvious things like they need to feel safe to contribute, to engage, to speak up. You also might want to make sure they feel valued for their contribution, appreciated for being there. You might want them to feel like this is worth their time. They're taking a day or an hour or however long out of the office. You want them to feel like it's worth it. The second thing is, what behaviours do you want participants to demonstrate? Now, when we go through the wheel of what's the first time, most facilitators talk about we want people to behave respectfully, we want them to be open-minded, we want them to be kind and considerate to others, and those are all really great behaviours. But you also might want to think about the tone of the workshop. Are you wanting them to be innovative, or are you wanting them to be reflective? Are you wanting them to be generative? You're wanting them to ideate? You're wanting them to be creative? Or are you wanting them to be more risk aware and thinking of do critical type thinking? So what are the behaviours that you want participants to demonstrate? That's question 2. The third question is, in order for this workshop to be successful, what do you need participants to know? Now, in a workshop setting where it's planning or ideation or it's process driven, what you want participants to know might be context. It might be information about the project. It might be what's happened to date, what's coming up. Where does this conversation fall into the flow of things? It might be context around who actually gets to make the decisions here. Yes, there'll be decision-making frameworks, but where does the buck stop and who gets to say the final yes or no? If you're designing a training session, then what do participants need to know is more about what things do you want them to leave the workshop being able to do? What are the key learning outcomes or the key principles that you really want to have embedded in their mind as they leave? Question 4 is, what do participants need to discuss? So when it comes to a process-based workshop, the discussion piece is about pulling apart, exploring, ideating, debating, all of the critical things that are going into that problem solving or to that planning. If you're talking about a training session, you're wanting to design a learning experience, the discussion piece is around what do participants need to discuss in order to be able to apply this new learning back in their own context? What are the discussions that will be useful for them in order to embed the learning in a way that matters to them? Then question 5, the last one is, what do participants need to decide? Now, if you're in a workshop setting, which is planning or ideation, this might be a collective decision. What are the critical decisions that, as a group, need to be made before the workshop ends? If you're in a training situation, It might be, what is the decisions that individual participants need to make? It might be, what's one thing they're going to do differently or start doing or stop doing as a result of what they've learned? What's that individual decision they need to make before they leave? This wheel of what's shapes up the order of your workshop, because you can't expect people to make a decision about something until they've had time to properly discuss it. You can't expect them to have a proper, robust discussion until they've got the context, they know the principles, they understand what's going on in the situation. And of course, you can't expect them to be open to learning if they're not feeling safe to do so and being respectful of each other. So the wheel of what's actually dictates the order of your workshop. How you need participants to feel and the behaviours you want them to demonstrate is all about setting the scene. That's the first part of your workshop design, actually setting the scene, getting people comfortable in the space. Then comes the next bit of what do participants need to know and discuss. That's the bit where all the work is happening, the thinking, the uncovering, the exploring, the discussing, the debating. And then finally, the decision making is where we start to wrap the session up. But why we map these on a wheel is that it doesn't stop there. Sure, at the end you want participants to make a decision, but you also want to make sure that as they leave the session, they have the best possible feelings also. So, as you wrap up, you also need to consider, how do we need participants to feel as they leave the room? Okay, so we've covered part 1 and 2, the real foundations that you need to have in place before you start the design process. So part 1, get really clear on your why this, why now, why them, and why me. Part 2 is your wheel of what's. What do participants need to feel? What behaviours do they need to demonstrate? What do they need to know? What do they need to discuss? And ultimately, what do they need to decide? Part 3 is when you get into designing how you will achieve all of that. And there's a whole ton of ways you can do it, but I use a very simple template, which I call the what, which, when template. And it works like this. The first step is to map out your mini objectives from your wheel of what's. That's your what's. So I might say something like, I want people to feel safe to contribute and engage. So the what is safety. I want people to feel safe as they are coming into the room. That's step 1. The next step is when. When is about the order in the workshop, but also it's about how much time am I going to allocate to this? How important is this to the success of the whole workshop? So I might say, actually, this workshop, maybe it's around a controversial topic, maybe the people don't know each other that well. I might need to spend quite a bit of time getting this right. I might allocate a whole 20 minutes for just a 3-hour workshop. If it's a simple meeting or workshop with people who know each other well, who are already well connected, I might only allocate 5 minutes to it. But you need to decide, how does this fit in the context of the whole session and how much time am I going to allocate to it? That's step 2. And then step 3 is the which column, which is, if this is what I'm trying to achieve and this is how much time I have to achieve it in, which activity, which process, which framework am I going to use to make that possible? So in some of my other videos, you'll hear me talk about icebreakers or connection activities, unofficial starts. They're all ways to help create this. You get to pick which one of those activities we will use. So one of my favorite ones is the question swap. So on my workshop plan, I'll just pop that in as the name of the activity. And then when I'm facilitating on the day, I know exactly what to do in those moments. Now you'll notice there's a fourth column, which I haven't mentioned yet, and I simply call that the and column. That's simply where I put a list of resources or things I need to prepare ahead of time to make sure on the day everything's going to flow like clockwork. And so there you go. That's how you design a workshop. Start with your why. Why this? Why now? Why them? Why me? Map out your wheel of what's. What do participants need to feel? What behaviours do they need to demonstrate? What do they need to know, discuss and decide? And then take all of those what's and map them down into your what, which, when template. Once you've got all your what's in place, allocate timing, followed by which activity, process or framework will you use in the time allowed. Of course, in order to put something in the which column, you need to have a toolkit of frameworks and processes and activities that you can drop in there. So if you head to my website, you can download a free copy of this book, Facilitate This. It's got 45 different activities that you can use to build connection and spark conversation in a group setting. The link is in the description below. Go get it.